Call someone a hedonist today, and it is almost always an insult. It conjures up a highly specific image, someone who is entirely self-absorbed, obsessed with status, and fixated on superficial wealth. We see this play out in the relentless cycle of consumer tech. People endure massive financial strain and debt just to replace last year's perfectly good device with a new one boasting a marginally better camera. This mindset bleeds into how we judge each other. Driving a functional 1995 sedan isn't seen as practical. In a highly consumerist culture, it is viewed as a failure to keep up with the baseline of success. At the extreme end, this behavior morphs into pure status signaling. People spend 5 figures on designer dresses or gold boots, not for utility, but strictly to broadcast they have the capital to do so. We have equated happiness with the mindless consumption of the next available product. Because there's always a newer model, a higher status tier, and a more expensive brand, the pursuit never actually ends. It just leaves us exhausted. To understand why we fall into this cycle, we have to look at our baseline programming. Psychological hedonism is the observation that human beings are biologically hardwired with 2 primary directives: seek pleasure and avoid pain. When this wiring misfires, it creates distinct dysfunctions. Some suffer from hedonophobia, where any moment of joy triggers intense anxiety that sadness must inevitably follow. Others experience anhedonia, a total numbness where they cannot feel pleasure at all, leaving them constantly complaining despite objective comforts. The human drive to seek joy is functioning exactly as intended. What is broken is the modern strategy we use to satisfy it. To fix that strategy, we have to look backwards and examine how humanity originally managed the pursuit of pleasure. Throughout antiquity, the desire for happiness was not condemned as a moral failure. Ancient philosophers and societies viewed the intentional pursuit of pleasure as a necessary component of a well-lived life. Take the Epic of Gilgamesh from ancient Mesopotamia. When the king becomes obsessed with the impossible goal of immortality, a divine tavern keeper named Siduri advises him to stop overcomplicating things. She tells him to simply fill his belly, dance, play music, and let his days be full of joy. Ancient Egyptian culture echoed this pragmatism in their Harper songs. These musical poems encouraged people to enjoy their current existence fully, reasoning that since the afterlife's fate is uncertain, you might as well guarantee yourself some happiness while you were still breathing. In ancient Greece, the philosopher Democritus built his ethical framework around this exact concept. He argued that satisfaction and a cheerful disposition are the highest targets of human existence. These highly advanced civilizations extracted deep meaning from the exact same pursuit that gives modern society relentless anxiety. The difference lies in how they understood the mechanics of where joy actually comes from. Modern unhappiness is driven by a conflict between 2 frameworks, the theory of quality and the theory of attitude. The theory of quality states that pleasure exists entirely inside the physical item. If a phone is expensive or a car is luxurious, the happiness is baked into the metal and glass. Under this logic, the only way you can experience joy is if you physically possess the object. The theory of attitude flips this completely. It argues that pleasure is generated entirely within your own mind. It radiates outward, allowing you to extract deep joy from a basic meal or a decades-old laptop, regardless of the object's market value. Consumerism traps us by constantly selling the theory of quality. True philosophical mastery requires adopting the theory of attitude. To apply this attitude, we have to separate the tool from the feeling. Ethicists do this by dividing our desires into 2 categories: instrumental value and intrinsic value. A smartphone, a luxury bag, or a pile of cash possess only instrumental value. They are simply delivery mechanisms. You do not actually want the pieces of plastic or the paper notes. You want what those things can acquire. The intrinsic value, the final target of human action, is the psychological state. It is the actual feeling of peace, satisfaction, or security that you hope the instrument will provide. When we confuse the instrument for the goal, we end up hoarding tools without ever building anything. We chase the newest phone or the faster car, forgetting entirely why we wanted them in the first place. Stopping at the instrument is what philosophers call base hedonism. This is the shallow trap of acquiring a shiny object or chasing a status symbol purely for the sake of holding it. The alternative is higher hedonism. Here, pleasure and resources are still acquired, but they are used strictly as a bridge to a deeper, more profound state of being. A higher hedonist might aggressively seek financial freedom, not to display a massive house, but to quietly guarantee their family's security and buy back the time to focus on spiritual growth. They might buy a reliable new vehicle specifically so they can easily transport neighbors who need help. The desire for pleasure is inherently human. The goal is not to kill your desire to be happy. The goal is to elevate what triggers that happiness. When you master your attitude, your joy is no longer dictated by the release of the newest product or the opinions of a crowd. Your happiness becomes an instrument itself, one that serves a much higher purpose.